Hey everyone, it's Alex Ball with another episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast. Today I'm excited to talk with Doug and Kayleigh over there at Breadseed Farm in rural Vermont. We'll dig deep in using no-till to help market your farm, building a farm with community as core, and adding value with ginger and dried flowers. So without any further ado, let's get to the episode with Doug and Kayleigh at Breadseed Farm.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast is brought to you by BCS America. BCS two-wheel tractors are designed and built in Italy, where small-scale farming has been a way of life for generations. Discover the beauty of BCS on your farm with PTO-driven implements for soil working, shredding cover crops, spreading compost, mowing under fences, clearing snow, and much more, all powered by a single gear-driven machine that's tailored to the size and scale of your operation. We have been using a BCS tractor on our farm since 2014, and it has saved the day and leveled the workload more times than I can count. And I find new ways to employ it every single season. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. To learn more, view sale pricing, or locate your nearest dealer, visit bcsamerica.com. That's bcsamerica.com. Today's episode is also brought to you by Certified Naturally Grown. At the heart of sustainable ag is the belief that soil health and thriving ecosystems grow the very best food. Certified Naturally Grown is a grassroots certification program that recognizes direct market farmers using holistic methods and shows your customers that the products you bring to market are grown to the highest ecological standards. If you're looking for an affordable certification option that focuses on the thriving of local farms and foodways, you're going to want to check out CNG. Their peer-to-peer inspections create opportunities for farmers to connect, exchange knowledge, and build regional support between growers. Certify your produce, flowers, livestock, apiary, aquaponics, or mushroom operation today. Find out more at cngfarming.org. That's cngfarming.org. All right, enjoy the show.
So I'm super excited to have Doug and Kayleigh on the episode today. They're out there in Vermont. Doug and Kayleigh, thank you so much for being on the show with me.
Alex.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Alex.
thank you so much for having us.
Oh, I'm so thankful to have you all. And I love talking to couples about their farm operations. You can just hear both sides and hear what's really going on there. So tell me a little about Breadseed Farm. Where are you located? What zone are you in? And what kind of is the size of your property you're working with?
Sure. Yeah, Breadseed Farm, we're in Craftsbury, Vermont, which is in the Northeast Kingdom. We're in the ruralmost corner of the state, which is comprised of, 3 different counties that, have the least amount of population, definitely have the most rural character of the state. And Craftsbury, we're in about a town of 1,200 people. And
it's a great little town. We have a agricultural college in town called Sterling College, which is great. We have a Craftsbury Outdoor Center, which is a great place for cross-country skiing and rowing and other sports in the summer. So it's a vibrant little town, nice little village.
Nice. And how much land do you have in cultivation at your farm?
Yeah, we were a half acre. These past 2 years, this is only 2023, we're going to be going into our third year of production, but the past 2 years we've been cultivating a half an acre. We're doing all no-till raised permanent beds. So we have 120 50-foot beds that we're looking out on covered in snow right now. And
this year we're going to expand, or last fall we just started expansion. We're basically doubling our size. We'll be at 9/10 of an acre starting for the 2023 season. So that's 200 50-foot beds in the field with another 16 in high tunnels. And we have 2 Farmers Friends Caterpillar tunnels that we use for season extension as well.
That's a big expansion in one season. What was kind of your push to go to that next size level?
Yeah, I think the main motivation, honestly, was getting the farm to a size that it could support both of us. I know we'll be talking about this, but right now Doug is the main employee of the farm, and the goal is that it will support both of us. So really expansion was thinking about how can we continue to kind of up our profits so that both of us can be full-time in the field during the season.
Yeah, and I think we were focusing a lot on the market garden crops, greens and high value crops, and we're primarily most of our sales are at farmers markets. So being able to diversify. So even staying within the market garden system, next year we're going to add some different crops that may not typically being grown by market gardeners. We're adding in winter squash and corn, even potatoes. We're expanding on sweet potatoes, melons. So yeah, diversity. We saw a big need for that at the farmers markets. So it's a good way to expand.
Yeah. So you said you've been at this space now for 3 years. And was that property already a production facility or a farm at that time? Was it a raw piece of land? How was it when you all got there?
Yeah, we did. We turned the land into production fields, but previous to that, it was a person's just horse field, I guess. Pasture. Yeah, that was the big thing, was finding land. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. We took a long time trying to find the right piece of land. We were lucky enough to both have really wonderful farm management jobs in Massachusetts that we both loved. So we had the time to search and did a lot of looking on Zillow and, those different avenues to try and find both a house that we connected with and land that we knew would work on site as well. And, if people are familiar with Vermont's landscape, it's pretty hilly. And I feel like we're kind of traditionally known more as pasture land and dairy. And, that's kind of what the state is known for. So I feel like having some nice, more level veggie fields was a bit more of a challenge to find. We don't need a lot. We know we weren't ever going to expand probably more than an acre of growing space, but even that was kind of challenging to find.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. And I'm not familiar with the landscape there. Is it like bottomland drain really well there? Is it heavy soil? What's kind of your makeup out there in these hilly areas?
Yep. So we're east of the Green Mountains. We're at about 1,300 feet of elevation, whereas we're right on the cusp of zone 3 and 4. We can be as cold as a zone 3, but in the last couple of years, we've been leaning towards 4A. So, but the piece of land that we found we think it's perfect. It's Buckland loam. It's designated as prime agricultural land by the state of Vermont. We started at like 6.5% organic matter. It's more clay-like than typically what I was used to in Massachusetts, but it drains decent. It's really nice soil. We ended up getting about 16.5 acres, 3 of which is pasture where our house is, where the greenhouses are. And that's pretty much 1.5 acres on either side of the driveway. The driveway kind of divides it perfectly. And then we have another 13 acres of a wood lot, mostly sugar bush, sugar maples.
We used a tool that I feel like was completely integral to the process of finding the house and land called U.S. Web Soil Survey, which I hadn't used before, but when we were searching for land during the beginning of the pandemic, and I guess prior to that too, but the pandemic definitely made visiting Vermont much more difficult because we were outside of Boston in a place where there were a lot of COVID cases happening. So we used this tool where we could remotely map our soils, which was just incredible to be able to get into the nitty gritty. This resource online has 99% of US soils mapped. So we were able to plug in the address of the house and other houses we were looking at and get a detailed report of like how rocky the soil was, what the slope was, and then down to right soil type. So getting that Buckland loam classification. And that was so helpful because
we could easily rule stuff out right away.
Yeah.
If it wasn't good land.
Yeah. So you're saying that you're originally or you're farming in the Massachusetts area. So what led you to this community specifically? And then the second part of that is, how did y'all get into farming? So how did y'all get into like looking to find a piece of land out of state? What led you towards that?
Kayleigh grew up here in the Northeast Kingdom, about, what would you say, 30 miles away, 30 miles further east towards the New Hampshire border. And I just loved coming up here ever since I met her. Vermont is truly, truly a special place. There's no place I'd rather be. And how did I got into farming? I studied ag and soil science at the University of Massachusetts. We met in 2013. I applied to work for Kayleigh. She was my boss. She was managing a nonprofit farm, Gaining Ground in Concord, Mass, where we met and then worked there together for 4 years.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, it's nice to come. It feels like a homecoming, definitely, to be back in the Northeast Kingdom. I'd say that I never thought I would come back, and maybe that's a lot of people's narratives of like growing up in a small town, rural, and thinking they might, all they wanted to do was leave, which I feel like was definitely my train of thought when I was 18. But it's been a nice full circle to come back. And yeah, I feel like the journey of me being away and being in the Boston area where Doug and I met was definitely reconnecting with a lot of the things that I missed and realized were really unique to this area, which is that so many people here still are very connected to the landscape and part of a working landscape. And, just a lot of people are still, working with the woods and working with the land or farming in different ways. So we felt like we wanted to be a part of that. There's just like an amazing tradition of agriculture in this area to learn from. And we also felt like to contribute to as well. But yeah, I didn't study ag. Both Doug and I have been working about 15 years now on farms. I was managing farms outside of Boston for 12 years before we moved here. So we both worked at this nonprofit farm for 8 years. And then I also managed a farm to table market garden for 4 years as well. So,
wow, a lot of experience coming into this.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it was pretty much the best experience you could get. Us in our farm manager roles, we were pretty much given the keys to the whole thing. And, we were so trusted and enabled and, allowed to do what we do best, grow veggies. So it was we couldn't get a better learning experience at our 2 separate jobs.
That's Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I honestly think I don't know. It's the advice. I don't know if anyone's asking my advice, but I say it would be my advice that before starting a farm, getting as much experience as you can, I feel like was just the absolute reason I think we've found success. I mean, we're lucky enough to say we found success very quickly in this farm in these past 2 years. And it's because we had years of experience making a lot of mistakes and honing our skills and learning how we wanted to grow, learning the make or break tools we needed. I mean, luckily it was kind of on someone else's dollar. We were lucky enough, to work for both a restaurant group and a nonprofit that had budgets to support us. Learning, kind of going from being a more traditional tillage system to learning how we wanted to run a smaller scale, more intensive no-till farm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the opportunity to kind of offset those costs of learning are so important. And I felt like, especially in my own operation, like those were the hardest mistakes, like having tried to generate enough capital to stay in business while trying to learn how to farm at the same time is like a recipe for disaster. And I see so many farms every year go out of business because like all of us want to farm, but maybe don't have access to the job or don't have, good farms around them to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
So you were saying earlier, Doug, so you're the main summer employee. How does labor work on your business? Are you both there full time the year? Do you hire any labor? How does that play out for you?
Yep. So for the last 2 years, I've been the full-time farmer. Year one, I tried it. Maybe it was kind of crazy to do basically a whole half acre by myself. So year two, we decided to hire somebody. This whole time I'm working, Kayleigh is still working, basically a part-time on the farm while working another full-time off-farm job. She's still putting in 10 to 20 hours per week, does her own farmer's market on the weekend. But I took care of all the field work essentially in year one. And then year two, we hired our first employee that worked 1 to 2 days a week. So anywhere between 8 and 16 hours a week. And we paired that having her on Tuesdays when we do wholesale deliveries and CSA harvest, and having there for Friday for market prep. So we do 2 markets on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So having her there on those 2 days was instrumental. I don't know how I would have done it without her this year. Yeah.
We do have and need to shout out to our volunteers too. We both come from working at very community-based farms, and I feel like it's something we wanted to bring into this farm too, is getting as many people, neighbors and friends and things involved in the process as well. And I feel like we both really kind of like the teaching, aspect, experiential learning aspect of being able to bring people onto a farm as well. So both in year 1 and 2, we've had volunteers in a small capacity, but I'd say 5+ hours a week. We've had consistent people coming out week to week to help out with certain tasks as well.
So we basically have a greenhouse crew, 2 friends that are older that have recently retired, come and help me seed the weekly seeding schedule on Monday afternoons. We have Kayleigh's dad comes on Tuesday and helps finish wash pack, and then takes out all the deliveries for our wholesale orders. Kayleigh's mom is here on Friday helping us pack greens. Basically our number one selling crop is bagged greens. She's spending a few hours bagging and weighing greens for us for markets, which allows me to just get back out in the field and continue harvesting or field work, not getting behind on other things. She loves to do it. I think it's nice. They both recently retired, so it's nice for them to get out of the house, and they want to be supportive. So, and it's great for me as I'm not officially the son-in-law, but to get to spend a lot of time with the in-laws. They're both so great.
That's super nice. It sounds like you have a real community of people, not only workers, but family super close to you, who's be part of your life, and not only part of your farming life, but your real life. So you were saying earlier, a pretty rural area. Are people like, where the nearest homes closest to you? Where the nearest towns to you? You said your parents live close to you. How far away are they?
My dad is about a half hour. My mom's about 45 minutes from us. So in Vermont terms, that's pretty much neighbors.
Yeah.
But we do actually have houses close to us. And I feel like actually our neighbors are also so supportive of us. I feel like sometimes that can be hit or miss. I feel like living in a more rural area, sometimes people do kind of want to keep to themselves, but we're actually on a street that's pretty tight knit. Almost everybody's a CSA member who's on our road. We're on a dirt road, but it does have a little bit of traffic because we're close to a pretty big dairy farm down the road. So, it's definitely frequented.
All our woodlots connect to all our neighbors, and we all share big hiking cross-country ski trails through our neighborhood. So it's like pretty open. You can travel on anybody's property through their woods. So it's really nice little place. As for town, we have a little village with a post office, a general store, and a garage, I guess.
Mhm.
That's about it. The general store is amazing. One of our best wholesale customers there. We're selling them about depending on the season, between 20 to 30 bags of spinach and, another 20 to 30 bags of lettuce mix every week. They have great lunch, great sandwiches there. So
they're buying bulk for the deli as well.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great transition. So being in a rural space, you heard you have some CSA members on your area. You're doing some wholesale to this small store. What's the makeup of your distribution for your products?
Mm-hmm. I think farmers markets are our jam, definitely. We do two of the biggest markets in the state. I do Montpelier every Saturday. Kayleigh does Stowe on Sundays. The farmers market sales make up 70% of our gross sales year to year. Living in the smaller town community, we have 25 CSA members last year.
Mhm.
So the last 30% of our sales was almost split exactly down the middle. Between wholesale and CSA. We do live in the town with the biggest organic farm in the state that probably has 1,000 CSA members at least throughout the state. So that's some competition, or not really. He's on a whole nother level, but we've actually found that some of the town members want to support even smaller and be a part of our CSA, explicitly made that decision to join ours. So that was sweet.
You said earlier that 45 minutes is a short drive in Vermont. How far away are these markets to get to? The biggest markets, how far away are they from your location?
Yeah, the market I go to on Sundays in Stowe is 45 minutes. And then Doug is traveling about an hour to the capital city market, which is in Montpelier. But
we made that decision strategically because there's a farmer's market on Saturday morning in our town. It just doesn't get the volume of people at those two other markets. It's much more worth it for us to trek up and pack up and drive an hour.
But I think people were surprised by that. I feel like probably the comment we get the most about the farm is that they're just surprised maybe how fully fledged we went into our first season. I feel like, and it was our goal in a lot of ways, was to go in as a fully realized business with all of our infrastructure tools in place and aim high too by applying for these two markets that are some of the busier markets in the state without really ever having grown on this land before. It was a bit of a gamble, honestly, but surprisingly it worked out for us. And it also kind of defined us in a lot of ways. Or now I feel like we're realizing we're a farmer's market farm. I mean, that's how we are going to make this work.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe going into it, we thought we'd be able to gain CSA members over the years. And I think we will incrementally grow some CSA members, but we're only doing CSA pickups very locally. We're doing a CSA pickup on farm, and we're doing a CSA pickup in the other very small neighboring town that only has a year-round population of 600 people, but a higher summer population because of the lake there. So we just realized we have to travel a little bit to get to these markets, but the money we're making from them, it makes it completely worth it.
And we're to be even crazier, we might potentially add a third market next year with the expansion of land. But that's still in the works, kind of undecided how we would logistically manage a third market.
Yeah, those markets are a lot of work, and even one's a lot for me. I can imagine two's a lot, and putting three on there, that's a big a lot to do. But if that's your main thing, that's what you're known for, I can totally see that being worth it. When you're at the market, I said there are a lot of people there. What do you think that you do specifically that allows you to kind of carve a little niche out compared to other products at these larger markets?
Yeah, I feel like both markets we're at have about 60 vendors. They're both incredibly different, which is why I find it fascinating. I feel like the thing about being a farming couple is I feel like you end up just talking about this stuff all the time. So I feel like we love breaking down. We each go to our separate markets and we love like breaking down what we sold when we got home. And I feel like it's really a thing to nerd out about, I guess. But yeah, I feel like we've carved ourselves out in a couple ways. I feel like we advertise on our, very simple banner that we are no-till, small-scale, regenerative. And that does differentiate us from the two markets. In Montpelier, where Doug's going, we're about one of 8 or 9 veggie vendors. At the Stowe Market, where I'm going on Sundays, it's a very different landscape. It's a much more tourist market. And I'm really only one of 3 veggie vendors. But I do think the no-till, regenerative, small scale advertising, it's always a conversation point. I feel like at least a couple times a market, people ask about it, and we do our little elevator pitch about what that means to us. Other than that, I think the diversity thing too, that's what I've found is that, especially at Stowe, where there are not a lot of other veggie vendors, I've found people really respond to us having an incredibly diverse array of veggies available, where someone feels like they can come in and do that full grocery shop. And having that extra diversity just bumps up the median buy that someone has. That's not the right way to say it. But yeah, it just bumps up like what each everyone sale pays. Yeah. The like median sale of the day, because people will not just come to us for greens, which I'd say almost everyone who comes buys greens, but it means they'll also pick up those other things that will round out their meal for the week.
Yeah, totally. So if you've already had that customer come in there weekly for greens, they're already kind of bought into your whole thing. Why not try to sell them the melon, the corn, the potatoes, whatever, past that?
Yeah.
And do you find that the two like the sales are radically different, like what you can push at each of those markets, or do they kind of even out at the end of the year?
No, I think the Montpelier market, where there's much more veggie vendors,
and it's more of a locals market, I would say.
And the locals are great too in Montpelier, because contrary to what we just said, at Montpelier, the customers are very conscious of who they're buying from, and that they kind of spread the love. So they're stopping and getting a couple of things from X farm. They're stopping and getting a couple of things from Y, and then they stop and get a couple of things from us. So yeah, they're radically different in that way. Whereas in Stowe, it's just kind of a free-for-all. Everybody comes in and fills up shopping bags and totes. So yeah.
I think the sales balance themselves out, which is kind of nice. I feel like the height of sales at the Stowe market are midsummer, when most people are, Stowe has its winter tourist season, but are vacationing there midsummer. And then I feel like spring and fall actually it's a longer market at Montpelier. And like I said, it's more of a locals market. So I feel like spring and fall is actually more of when Montpelier really shines, especially the fall. And I feel like people are more stocking up for winter too, which has been really nice. They're doing preserving. So yeah, they have kind of different fluctuations, but they both even out.
Totally. Yeah. Montpelier is more like a marathon of a season, and Stowe is a sprint from 4th of July to Labor Day. It's intense market.
That's super cool. Besides, I've heard you said salad mix, is there anything that you've been really excited about growing that's been doing really well at the markets for you this season?
I feel like what's on top of mind, which we've been talking about a little bit, is the end of the season we did harvest and sell our fresh ginger, which, is such a specialty crop, so much fun, just brings people to the stand. Then it's already has us planning and has us ordered a lot more to grow next year. We we didn't take the tops off the ginger and had it kind of front and center at the stand. And at first we were like, oh, are people not going to want to buy this because it's going to be weighed with the top? Maybe everyone's going to ask us to chop the top off. But everybody was so interested in what it was. It drew people in. They were asking questions. We were telling them that the tops could be used as like a lemongrass seasoning or using it for tea. And then everyone was carrying it around and had it in their bags or their market baskets. And then it drew attention to those customers to come back to our stand. It was this like cool little advertising thing that was happening. So that's something we're definitely going to expand on.
Mm-hmm.
Today's episode is brought to you by RIMOL Greenhouses.
Whether it's tomatoes to market, flowers in the spring, or your family's harvest, growing in a greenhouse protected from the weather provides the right environment that you need for a harvest that you can count on. RIMOL Greenhouses are designed for durability and offer the quality that you need to grow productively year-round. Visit RIMOLGreenhouses.com to get a quote today.
If I may editorialize for a second, I own a RIMOL tunnel. I love it. We built it ourselves, and I really appreciated the quality of the tunnel as well as the customer service we received in the process, so make sure to check them out. Today's episode is also brought to you by Orisha. Orisha is a greenhouse automation company whose mission is to make agriculture more ecological and productive through advanced technology. Orisha automates all temperature, humidity, and irrigation management systems. Their products are designed to be instinctive, easy to install, and wireless, and their remote management application allows growers to save time. In addition, the integration of AI in their programs offers more precision and better control over the various factors influencing the environment inside your greenhouse. Last thing, Orisha wants to help market gardeners optimize their yields. Automating allows a better quality of life, can save several weeks of labor costs, and saves nearly 20% in energy costs. Listeners can use the promo code NOTILLGROWER, that's 3 words, NOTILLGROWER, to get 15% off your order. Check them out at orisha.io. That's ORISHA.io. All right, back to the show.
So you were saying earlier you're in zone 3, 4A-ish. So when you get that in the ground, what's the process of growing that in maybe the shorter season?
Yep. So we don't break into the fields till into May. So even onions and our first round of spring brassicas, we basically have to wait till the first week of May. We've pushed it our first 2 years, and it's just been met with stress and worry that it's dipping down to the teens. We've been able to make it through those cold snaps, but this year we learned it's like, oh, let's just wait till the first week of May and get stuff in the ground then. Falls have been, probably like everywhere, falls have been staying warmer for longer. So we haven't quite seen what we expected up here in Vermont of the cold, harsh, snowy, quick end of season. We've heard tales from our neighbors and other farmers, horror stories of frosts in late August or 6 inches of snow in late September. But luckily it's been a fall that we're typically used to, like a Massachusetts fall. It hasn't been as extreme as I was thinking it would be. So those.
But for ginger, if we're talking about
ginger
production, we are doing that all in our heated greenhouse, meaning heating it in that early shoulder season when we're starting our seedlings. So the ginger seed, which we're buying in and sprouting it in trays, we are starting at the first week. We're starting all of our earliest seeds, so first week of March, planting it out in the greenhouse in May, and then we were harvesting it in October.
We kind of strategically planned it to kind of quarter the harvest and bring it to our last 4 weeks of markets.
I like that. So try to end the season with a nice big bang with all this fun ginger, have a big display. I liked that. So do you, I don't know anything about growing ginger. Do you plant it in the ground and then cover with low tunnels, the fabric cover inside a hoop? Is that how you're producing it?
We produced it in our greenhouse. So our one heated greenhouse is our propagation house. We've split into half seedling production area and the other half is grow in the ground like a typical hoop house. So those crops that were grown in the ground while we're heating for seedlings in the springtime are getting that residual heat, so we get a little jump start to our spring that way. So yeah, we sprouted on heat mats, then planted in the ground as early as possible in May sometime. But the greenhouse is super warm by then.
Didn't keep it covered from there, had it completely uncovered, had it on drip. Yeah. Tried to keep it really nice and wet throughout the season. And then we don't heat the greenhouse in the fall at all. We do some winter, late fall greens in it, but we don't want to, right now, we're not paying for heat at that time of year. We're discussing maybe using the greenhouse in a more 4-season capacity, but right now we are really just using it 3-season and only heating it during seedling propagation time.
Well, that's super cool. I've been thinking about growing ginger in the past. I've been thinking about it every year, but I haven't pulled the trigger. I think maybe this year I'm going to try a little bit. I'm going to just a little bit.
I think you should. Yeah, it's fun. It's like fun to learn the new cycle of a crop.
Yeah. After growing for 15 years, the same 40 crops over and over. I mean, that obviously you never stop learning with growing those 40 crops, but adding something in, it's been really cool over the last couple of years. And the people receive it so well. So it's like, how could you not?
No, totally. And it's also one of those, it's such a little fun, unique thing. If it can pull people into your booth and just end the year in a fun way, I can see it totally being worth it. On your Instagram, I saw something really beautiful. You're doing a lot of these dried flower wreaths. I want to know about that. How did y'all get into that, and what's kind of process of making those?
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yes, that's something that was new this year, both the dry flower wreaths and doing balsam wreaths as well. The dry flower wreaths are something that, the part of my kind of 20 hours a week during the main season are broken down into doing kind of marketing for the farm and then flower production for the farm. So that's both very small flower CSA that we do and have pickups here and in Greensboro or neighboring town. And then I do bouquets for market as well. So the dry flower wreaths were just a nice way to kind of extend the season for us. That's really kind of what our wheels are turning about in a lot of ways, is how can we already have a pretty nice long farmers market season, but again, kind of just attaching ourselves to being a farmers market farm and expanding sales through maybe December and holiday markets. The Capital City Market we go to has markets through December that we'd be able to attend. But as of now, we just went through Thanksgiving, and I made dry flower wreaths for our last Thanksgiving market we did. And then also did evergreen wreaths as well. So it's a fun thing that personally I just find a lot of enjoyment and passion around. So I hope to continue to do it. Yeah, they seemed well received, and I think in the future it could be something I could ship them more. Right now we're mainly selling them locally, but evergreen wreaths too, I think could be something we could ship. It's the cool thing about having this woodlot behind us is that we have in our northern forest is our woods are mainly made up of balsam and maple. I mean, we have some beautiful beech and birch there too, but those are two things we're thinking, like, if we are maybe looking to up some other cottage industry things when we're not in the kind of stress of the main season, maybe we do bump up some balsam products. So both garlands and wreaths, and then maybe a small sugaring operation too. Maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves there, but a good thing that, traditionally a lot of people around here, if you dairied, you would always supplement your season with sugaring. So it feels like a natural thing to tack on at that time of year when not a lot's going on. It's a really lovely time to be out in the woods. So we have the capacity to tap quite a few sugar maples too. So
we ran a small sugaring operation in Massachusetts for about 8 years. 200 buckets. We made about 40 gallons of syrup a year. So adding that in, we have the experience doing that. So, and like Kayleigh said, it's always a party at the Sugar Shack. So it's fun. It's a good community building event every time people are boiling. So.
And I feel like it's always nice to add value to the farm with products that aren't like perishable, like salad mitts. Something that you can set in a corner and be like, okay, they'll be there in 2 weeks. It's not bad.
Totally.
So nice to have.
I know that's very true. Like the dried flower product. I mean, how nice that it's a little difficult to stay on top of when I'm cutting fresh flowers during the season, but as much as I can, trying to put that product away and have it at a time where I have the time to sit down and feel like I have time to be creative and, make those wreaths when we have this little more of a lull. I really love that. And I feel like, evergreen balsam stuff that fits perfectly into that time in November, December, where we just, it feels like we have all the time in the world in a lot of ways because we've gone from working 7 days a week to having a lot less on our plates.
And those flower wreaths, do you have to dry the flowers ahead of time and then in the fall make them, or do you make the wreaths ahead of time then dry them like that?
The nice thing is I was drying the flower and seed pods and foraging some of it all ahead of time, and then doing what I feel like is the more labor intensive part, which is constructing the wreaths in November, December. And that seems to be a nice time split for that product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're basically like cutting like fresh flowers. You're just bunching like types together, and then we just hang them down in our basement to dry down there.
Again, I saw the photos of the wreaths finished on your Instagram. I was totally blown away. They're so beautiful. And I can imagine at a market booth just grabbing the eye. That and the ginger, pull you right in.
Totally. And then we can hook them in to buy the carrots and winter squash, all the things we got left in the fall.
Exactly. Push the heavy veggies on them.
Yeah.
So, made a little bit of a little turn. I want to talk about how you manage your no-till bed systems. You said earlier, now you have 120 beds now with the update. We
started with 120 and now we're at 200, then plus an additional 24 in tunnels. So 224 now.
224 now. Okay, thank you. And so maybe walk me through a normal flip, let's say from like a salad mitts to another crop. How would you handle that in your system?
Yep, it's pretty typical, like what a lot of the market gardeners are doing. It's coming in with knives, removing the crop right at the base of the soil, being quick but clean with that, getting all the material out. All our pathways are wood chipped, so our pathways are always great. We're pretty well at keeping the farm pretty weed free, so it's removing the tops of the Salanova, cutting those at the base. About 10 5-gallon buckets of compost go on top, some fertilizer. Broad fork, obviously. Skip that step. So we'll broad fork, add compost, ferret, tilth, plant right again.
Yeah. I would say we're trying to leave roots in the ground when we can.
Yeah.
Always kind of either lopping out larger brassicas or cutting out greens as close to the surface as possible. And using a tilther as well is a tool. Maybe did you mention that? Okay.
Yeah.
We do have a BCS, but we've only used the BCS for initial field prep. So right now it is relying on a broad fork for the main loosening of any soil before planting or direct seeding.
Yeah, and we dug all the beds by hand, so lifted those about 6 inches, filled the pathways then with 6 inches of wood chips. Being in such a forested area, we have tons of tree companies that'll come and dump wood chips here for us. So then the first year when we were just focusing on a half an acre, we did about 2 inches thick of compost to get the beds up and started. And now we're adding about, maybe half an inch to about a half an inch every time we flip a bed over.
And you mentioned earlier, though, that your organic matter is pretty high there already, 5-6%?
Yeah, we started at 6.
6. Okay. And the area you're in, is it pretty well drained? Do you have any problems with water backing up in your fields and like that, or is it pretty stable?
We have a slight, it's very stable, and we have a slight slope, and we ran our pathways, all our pathways go down the slope. So if we were to get, a heavy rain situation, in theory, it would run down the pathways, or in theory, the wood chips actually just soak up all the excess moisture. But we kind of oriented the beds to go down the slope to kind of take the water with it.
To move with it.
Raising them up too was a nice way to increase some drainage too.
Yeah.
And that compost, is that like a dairy-based compost, or is that a plant-based?
It's a mix. We actually buy it in from, luckily, we are only an hour away from the Vermont Compost Company. We get our potting soil there, obviously, as well as their raw compost, which is a mixture. I think it has horse, cow, chicken.
But also mule.
A little bit of donkey. That's Karl's thing. So Karl, we see Karl every week. Karl Hammer, the guy who started Vermont Compost Company, he's one of our
shops with us.
Customers in Montpelier. So it's nice to always chat compost with Karl.
We felt like it was a big win when he started buying from us. I feel like he started just chatting and scoping us out, and then week 3 he bought some Hawkeye turnips, and we were like, yes, we got Karl on board. So
he's a celebrity in Vermont.
Yes.
Yeah. You need a photo of him in your booth signed, farm celebrities come here. Yeah. We get Elliot Coleman out there, everybody.
We'll bring like an old potting soil bag for him to sign.
Yes. You got to. Well, that's fantastic. You have access to all that great fertility so close to your operation.
Yeah. Yeah, we're pretty lucky.
I saw on your Instagram that you're using leaf mulch also as mulch in your walkways.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever have problems with like small mammals, pests get in there and nibbling on your stuff, or have you found has it been an issue?
I know. I feel like we've been pretty lucky that we haven't had that as an issue. I know hearing about a lot of, we both established no-till systems at the respective farms we were managing before we moved. So had 4 solid years working in no-till systems before this. And I do feel like I saw that kind of rodent vole damage increase over the years of keeping something in no-till. In these first 2 years, I feel like we haven't had that. I feel like using more like landscape fabric or things that do kind of keep the soil completely covered, or I feel like that really encouraged some rodent damage when I was, using burned landscape fabric for winter squash or something like that. But as of now, the leaf mulch it was just really a free resource for us that we took advantage of. Where, our fields, which are very open, are ringed by this pretty, established stand of mainly maples. So we just, in the fall, have a lot of leaves falling. So Doug is out there raking away. Yeah. And it was a nice thing to, when we were kind of out of one resource, we were out of wood chips, we started mulching pads with leaves.
We do have a very large active male cat that really likes to protect the fields from any rodents. Yeah. So he's basically out with me all day, and we call it patrol. So he just patrols the 3 acres of pasture all day. He walks the tree line. He is the guard. He won't let anything in.
That's hilarious. I like that. It's good to have a good farm cat with you at all times.
Yeah.
So besides that good compost, you said you're doing a bit of fertilizer every time. Is that like a 5x5? What is that?
Yeah, we use Harmony from Seven Springs. It's a chicken pelletized chicken manure. 9% calcium in that. I think it's a 5-3-4. But anyways, we mix that with alfalfa meal, about 5 parts chicken manure, 2 parts alfalfa meal, and then for heavy fruiting stuff, additional potassium, so sulfomag or potassium sulfate. That's pretty we try to keep it simple so that it can be replicated. and employees know the measurements, it's really easy. So it's getting about 100 pounds of nitrogen per acre per bed each time we plant.
I feel like we aspire to, I guess I can personally say that, really focusing on a biological method of, soil plant management too. I feel like I went through quite an Elaine Ingham phase where I was really inspired by her, use of compost teas and, really encouraging soil life and the microorganisms in the soil as a way to really unlock nutrients in the soil. So, I feel like in years where it feels like maybe we are in a little bit more of a routine, creating on farm with this high quality compost, we can get compost teas for foliar sprays as well, would be something we'd really like to do in the future.
Yeah, I think ideally we'll work away from buying in, fertilizers. Just like I think of tarps and fertilizer, like get rid of the silage tarps, no plastic, and slow down on what we need to purchase in on fertilizer would be farming in more of an idealistic way. But I felt it was like a little bit of a crutch that we leaned on during these first 2 years while we kind of observe, kind of navigate our soil's ecology and kind of observing the land. And, it also a new climate for us too. So seeing how plants respond. So.
Yeah. And maybe kind of along with that, being in this new climate, have you found any new pests or anything that's kind of like, something you haven't dealt with, something that's pretty bad at your site? I saw y'all doing some really interesting cucumber beetle prevention, so I'd love to know more about what you're doing over there.
Yeah,
I feel like unfortunately we were well acquainted with the cucumber beetle.
Yeah,
but there are some newbies. You can talk cucumber beetles. I feel like I feel like the new things we saw in this climate were leek moth. Something we hadn't had before in Massachusetts.
Affects every allium, leeks garlic.
Really?
Scallions, onions. Oh, it devours stuff. It's bad.
Like it eats the actual, like the root or the tops?
No, the tops.
Yeah.
And then we'll burrow into the layers in between the allium kind of bulb as well. It creates this window pane effect is what one identifying factor is when you're trying to see, what's going on with the plant. So yeah, you'd be able to see in scallions that they would kind of chew a layer and you could see through the greens of the scallion. So
and then it completely stunts stuff. Like as soon as it's infested with leek moth, growth kind of terminates, the plants kind of limp along, struggling. Luckily it was pretty easy to just remay stuff and keep that out. It's a night flying moth, leek moth, from what I understand. There's 3 phases of it: March, June, and September. So we've just kind of learned the cycles of the leek moth and been able to kind of mitigate some of the damage. But in the spring, it caught us by surprise this year. We didn't have it the first year because we were on new lands and it hadn't found us yet. But this spring we were like, whoa, what is going on here?
I feel like we learned the hard way that it can, I think, overwinter in plant material. And we had cured onions in the greenhouse where we were then starting allium seedlings in the greenhouse. So I think we were actually planting out infested seedlings. So we did. We lost some crop. We pulled some onions early spring when we had a bit of a panic. It was nice because we actually did leave something as a trial. We left some Ailsa Craig fresh white onions and they actually ended up pulling through. So it was kind of cool to see that, always amazing how resilient plants can be. Yeah. But that was the main one. I think one we're living in fear of is Swede midge, which is a brassica family.
It's so small you can't see it. And it infests like heads of brassica crop. So broccoli before it heads. It'll get in the head while it's forming or before it's forming and kind of retard the growth and shape of the head. So we've been able to avoid that too, just with simple remay. But back to the alliums, coming from Massachusetts, it's like one of the only things you don't have to remake was so nice. Alliums. Yeah. Adding that on, you're like, damn, more and more, everything's under remake at this point. But yeah, I feel like each year we'll learn and get more acquainted with the northern pests up here.
Yeah, it's like one crop. I feel like most alliums like, oh, that's our one like bulletproof thing that nothing really wants to deal with.
Yeah.
And then the cuke beetle thing was we have insect netting on both of our high tunnels. We had a little extra material left over. So we just kind of, in a pinch, we noticed a little bit of damage getting on the cukes that we planted in one of our cat tunnels that we had the sides rolled up on. So we actually just rolled out some insect screening and used zip ties to just hang it there, just above where the side was rolled up to. So we created a little barrier and it worked great. Mm-hmm. We actually just kept the door, the end walls closed for those cat tunnels. Luckily, we have pretty mild summers up here, so the stuff inside the cat tunnel wasn't cooking because we still had the sides rolled up, but the, airflow is definitely cut down a little bit with the insect screening. But yeah, we were able to pull through and had a great cuke harvest out of those cukes. Cukes number 3, that was.
Yeah. Do those cucumber beetles, when do they show up on your farm mainly? Is it late in the summer, in the spring, or are they kind of all season type of pest?
Cuke beetles like May, late May, as soon as it starts to warm up. As soon as we're putting cucurbits in the ground, they're like there. But like we do for summer squash, even it's covered until it starts flowering, and then they just grow right through it. So they're not a killer pest, they're just like more of a nuisance. But this was to get the cukes established well enough to start training them, trellising them, just kind of protecting stuff while it's young.
And maybe it'll shift from insect pests. Do you have any mammal pressure at your site? You fencing? How do you prevent that at your location?
I know, it's kind of scary to say. I don't want to jinx us, but as of now, we do not have any deer pressure. I don't know if that is a little bit of our site layout. Our land is interesting. We have our 3-acre site, which is our home, and then the farm fields. And right behind us, before it, moves into our woodlot, is a pretty steep ravine that drops down to a stream. You see a lot of prints right now in the snow of deer coming and drinking from the stream, but I don't know if that steep barrier kind of
prevents them from running up
keeps
the hill,
them from coming up. I feel like it's a pretty stark difference being in a rural area versus being in a suburban area too, because I feel like the deer population just do have much more places to eat and forage from, versus we were in really the Boston suburbs in a lot of ways, where there's just less and less space for them to be in. So there was an insane high deer pressure situation where it was one of our first things was to get up a permanent deer fence. Here, there's hundreds of acres of contiguous forest that can be in.
Fields too.
So I feel like maybe just the activity of our house, and then, having the road on the other side of the fields. I don't know if that's
we've been
being a bit of a deterrent, but I know woodchucks were a huge thing for us too at previous farm operations. And right now that's also something we're not seeing. And I mean, they can be so detrimental on a small scale, eating entire beds of lettuce or greens. But right now that's also not
hasn't been an issue yet.
Yeah, I talked to a flower farm for our first episode. I think they had like a $5,000 loss over a few days of a groundhog coming in and stripping down just beds and beds of flowers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we've all been there, but it just happens so fast. And I feel like, especially when we're on such a small scale, concentrated scale, they get in there one meal, one bed. There's $800.
Yeah. You can't take those losses at this scale.
No, you really can't. So maybe it's about losses is a good transition. In the next few years, or even not currently, what are some of the goals for your farm business? Where do you see yourself in 15, 20, 30 years? I know that's a lot. But you know, your farm is your own land, so it's a long term investment. So how do you see yourself at the end of the day, this business?
I would say it's a vibrant community space, a plant paradise that's sustaining us, a couple employees with a good quality of life, enough money for cost of living. But yeah, I kind of think of it more as the plant paradise, just having an abundance of diversity, just like our whole area just covered in plants, natives and fruit trees, and yeah, more beyond our annual vegetable production. Just creating a nice space.
Yeah, that's great. I like that vision. I feel like, I'd like to think I hope we're still farming in 30 years. And I think I have a good feeling about it because I feel like we have been farming for a long time now. And even though it's only a couple of years into our business, I feel like what both Doug and I go into the business with is always kind of challenging ourselves and learning something new every year. And I hope, even 30 years down the line, we still see ourselves as students and still see ourselves as like having new skills and new things to learn. Because I feel like that's what makes farming so interesting and so personally sustainable, is if it feels like every year isn't a slog. It's this new, exciting present to open with a ton of possibilities. And I feel like right now we already have a list of so many things we want to do. It's incredible how on such a small piece of land, it feels like you do have endless opportunities.
So it sounds like a dream of developing it to a paradise of plants and sustainability, not only for the farm but for the self. That's fantastic. So we have our final two questions of the show, and the first one I want to know is what's on your farmer heart? What's a topic, ag, local food related, that's been weighing on you? So kind of an open platform to talk about that.
Oh.
Did you think of anything?
I know, it's like, okay, when we're talking, something's going to come to mind. I don't know. I guess one thing that I feel like we think and talk about farming and sustainability and local food systems a lot. But I think one thing that I'm just excited about with our farm is really encouraging it to be an open space for people to come and visit. We've made an effort for that, even in just the past couple of years, with every person we see coming to the market stand, encouraging them to come visit us, being part of our, local NOFA's workshops. We did, a year one in business course with them last year, being part of Vermont's Open Farm Week, which invites community to come and do farm tours. And I feel like we've just seen this incredible, very indirect, or like an indirect positive reinforcement from that, which is just getting both CSA members from that and people who want to come and intern or volunteer from that kind of open farm, and trying to be as open source as possible to people who want to bring some of the things we do back to their home gardens. Or I think just being passionate, I hope we can bring that forward into years as we continue to farm, to just opening the farm up to classes and being a place for exchange, an exchange of ideas. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe for me, it's been just the outpouring of support, like from family, from friends, from the local community. Just how we've been completely welcomed into this new community has been amazing. My parents, Kayleigh's parents, our old board of directors at the nonprofit that we worked for. And just grateful for the opportunity to work on a piece of land with my best friend.
Yeah, I find that farms can always be not only such calming places, but just a safe place for people to just decompress and connect with nature. And it's fantastic that you're working to create that place for people in your community. I really appreciate that. Final question, and this is the hardest one. How do you find balance in working on the farm and taking care of yourself in this modern day? And maybe that's separate for each of you.
Yeah.
How do you find balance between your ag work and your lifestyle?
It's a good question. I don't, just being 2 years into doing it as our own business, I don't know if I found that space or that answer yet. I feel like we keep telling ourselves, like, or at least just speaking for me, I keep saying this is what it takes to start the farm. I need to work these crazy hours, these long days, because this is what it requires to get this business up and running and make it successful as we continue to grow into the future. So still trying to find the answer to that. But for me, I'm more of an early bird, so I'm up and out early, and I'm really good at knowing when the day needs to end, just for me physically, mentally. So I'm good about coming in at a reasonable time before dark to have a little decompression time and a cold shower before we do dinner. So still trying to find it kind of long term, but day to day, I think I have it. But going, it is a bit of it's a long season because, Saturday I'm at a market. Sunday when Kayleigh's at market, I'm harvesting. We're still working 7 days a week. But I'm confident we will find it, and as we move into the future, and we'll take the steps that we need to create a farm or a crew that makes everybody live a more healthy, balanced lifestyle.
Yeah, I would say taking care of myself, and something that feeds my soul too is being able to feed myself and both of us. I feel like it's the great thing about working on a farm is that I have the best ingredients, and I'd say after farming, cooking is my favorite thing. So I feel like, to me, taking care of myself is just making sure that we're well fed throughout the season too. So
And throughout the winter.
When there's much more time to make lavish meals. But even when time is scarce, making sure that we are taking the time out of the day to have like a nice leisurely lunch still, and a really nourishing dinner that's using all of this abundant, beautiful nutrient dense stuff we have out our door. I feel like it's easy to lose sight of that, but now that, I don't know, the fact that we have it out the door, I can't ever give that up. Even though I know it takes time to create a home cooked meal, I feel like it's something I never am willing to give up. And to me, that's very nourishing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is our sacred time. At the end of every farm day, we do sit down for an hour and take a moment, have dinner together. I know a lot of farmers are on the run and ordering pizzas, but we do still cook every day, which is
try and share that too when we can with friends or family too.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is like this ability to like set boundaries and say the work is done. Now it's time to heal. Now time to feed ourselves, not only food but emotionally at the same time.
Yeah, I think we're both pretty good at. I feel like as a farm manager, a skill we've honed over the years is prioritizing, and it's something we do every single day, and you have to do every single day as a farmer. Obviously, there's an ongoing list of things that need to be done, but very clearly defining what is priority in the day, and knowing that if you just get to those couple priority tasks and other things fall to the bottom of the list, you'll get to them another day. But I feel like that, to me, is the way of being a good, efficient manager too, is really knowing those key things to prioritize that will, in the long run, save you time.
Yeah, it allows us to walk in at the end of the day knowing that we're still on track for the week. And after 15 years of doing this, we know what a week looks like. We know what the schedule is. And yeah, we are day to day, we are getting the stuff done and able to come in and take some time off each night.
Oh, that's fantastic. And it makes me happy to hear that you'll have a routine to stay healthy and take care of yourself. Kayleigh and Doug, thank you so much for taking your time out of your busy schedule to sit down and talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
thank you so much,
for
Alex.
hosting us, Alex. It's great to talk to you.
We love the podcast and are always learning from it. So we hope people can take a little bit away from this and put into practice.
Oh, thank you all so much, and have a great day.
Well, thanks, Alex.
Thanks again to Kayleigh and Doug from Breadseed Farm for sitting down and chatting with us about their operation in Vermont. One thing kept coming up again and again in our conversation was the power of previous experience. They spend so much time on other farms, learning, failing like we all do, honing their skills, and really figuring out what they need and don't need in their forever farm operation. So when the time came for them to purchase their farm, they had a pretty solid idea. Even though their farm's only 3 years old, I'm excited to follow them over the next few years as they keep growing and growing. If you want to learn more about them, check out their Instagram. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great day.
Hey, you all, Farmer Jesse here, just jumping in real quick to catch you up on some of what we have going on. We just finished up a weekend at the Organic Association of Kentucky conference here in Kentucky, all of like 11 minutes away from my farm at the Kentucky State University Research Center. Not only was it a great conference, and I got to meet Nazirak Amen, who listeners will remember from previous seasons of the podcast, among other great folks that were there, but it was also the most convenient conference I've ever attended, so shout out to that. Also, our No-Till Growers YouTube channel will be kicking back to life again for another season of videos this month. If you have not checked out that channel, head to YouTube and subscribe. There are dozens and dozens of technical videos over there to check out. Speaking of checking stuff out, have you peeked at the new No-Till Growers forum yet over at no-tillgrowers.com? There are almost 1,100 or so growers over there now, maybe more by the time you hear this. So you can go and ask any growing questions that you have, and people like myself, but also a growing list of really excellent farmers will chime in, and without a bunch of snark or pretension like you sometimes find on other forums. There's no gatekeeping. It's just a forum for anyone of any level of experience or scale to enjoy. Like everything we do, that forum is free and open to the public. If you'd like to support our work or support the idea of keeping farming information free in general, you can pick up a copy of the Living Soil Handbook at no-tillgrowers.com or one of the no-till hats, which are back in stock. We've got merch there as well. The proceeds from those sales at no-tillgrowers.com go to supporting that work. If it's benefited you and you have the means to pitch in, that would be rad. Or even better, become a yearly or monthly Patreon member at patreon.com/no-tillgrowers, where not only may you get discounts on our stuff, but at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs this week to Dan Glover, Scott Roser, Rob Soma, Sean at All About the Garden, Joseph Sanguinetti, Bill Altman, Ian at Grindstone Farms, Danny Rodriguez, Alex Sawatsky, Pear Tree Hill Farm, Steve Burr, Stephanie and Alex, Stephen Smith, Jason Ruel, Ojai Roots, Scott Harris, Earth Care Farmer Jane Murner Cynical, Asia Smith, Tony Lopez, Clement, Judson Taylor, Grown Up Farm, Jacob Arthur, Bob and Ann Patton of Hexhamshire Organics, Jared Kirst of Rivendell Farm, Dan Brisebois, Jay McCombs, Tim Baldwin, Esoterra Culinary, Steve Larson, Fiona and Donnie of Firefly Farm, and Jen Lawrence. Love that first week of the month list. Huge shout out to everyone who supports our show in whatever way that you can. The Patreon page is the lifeblood of our work, so we hope you will hop on board over there. And that's it for me. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week.